Hello friends, I hope you are all good. So welcome back to this MCQ series. As you know that we have started with the MCQ series wherein you'll get 5 to 7 questions pertaining to securities law, and this lecture would be the 5th lecture of this video series. This video series will be quite helpful for you for your upcoming SEBI Grade A 2019 examination. There has been a news enlivenment that SEBI is going to recruit around 100 people each for the coming 3 years. So there is a very high probability that SEBI notification will come this year. And the same has been confirmed from other news sources too. So it is high time that you start your preparations now, and this video series will certainly help you to take a step towards your goal. So before jumping on to the first MCQ of this lecture 5, let me grab this opportunity and let you know about the excellent results produced by EduTap. So for the year 2017, we got 27 final selections in RBI Grade B and 11 final selections in NABARD Grade A. For the next year, that is 2018, our results improved drastically and we got 70 plus final selections in RBI Grade B and 26 final selections in NABARD Grade A. For the same year, that is 2018, with respect to SEBI Grade A examination, we are blessed to have such overwhelming results wherein out of 84 candidates selected, 41 were from EduTap. I would like to congratulate all the selected candidates for putting in their hard work and making it up to the final list. And when it comes to IBPS Agriculture Field Officer, we got 100 plus interview calls. So hope so that we get a good number of selection in this exam too. For knowing about the courses being offered by EduTap, you can take a quick snapshot of these slides. We offer individual courses of the mentioned examination, that is RBI Grade B, SEBI Grade A, NABARD Grade A, RBI Assistant, IBPS Agriculture Field Officer. We even offer combo courses of the mentioned examination, that is a combo of RBI NABARD SEBI, RBI NABARD, SEBI RBI, NABARD SEBI. You can opt for any of our combo courses based upon your exam preferences. We are glad to announce that we have launched a new course, that is QRE course for all banking examination. In this particular course, 3 aspects will be covered, that is quantitative aptitude, reasoning ability and English. So wrapping up with the introduction and moving on to the first question of this lecture 5. So with respect to question number 1, as per the official definition of fraud in Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices Act 2003, which of the following do not come under the ambit of fraud? So 5 following options are given. As per option A, a representation made in a reckless or careless manner, whether it be true or false. Option B says an active concealment of a fact by a person having knowledge and belief of the fact. Option C says a promise made to trade without an intention of performing it. Option D says prediction of prices trend in the securities market. Option E says all of the above come under the ambit of fraud. So now it would be very clear to you that this question is coming up from the official definition of fraud, which is clearly dealt in Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices Act 2003. So if you have the basic understanding of the definition, this question might not be very difficult for you. So let's learn something more about this question in the next slide. So moving on to the next slide, definition of fraud is clearly given in section 2C of Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices Act 2003. So first I'll read out the whole definition and then explain it to you. So as per section 2C, any act of expression, omission or concealment while dealing in securities by a person or his agent in order to induce another person to deal in securities, whether or not there is any wrongful gain made or avoidance of loss done, comes under the ambit of fraud. So one very obvious thing that you might have guessed till now is that the official definition is given in a single paragraph. I have splitted up the points so as to better understand it. So basically any act, expression, omission or concealment while dealing in securities amounts to fraud. I'll explain the term expression, omission and concealment with the help of example in the upcoming slide, but for now, in short, it is anything which is related to you telling a lie or misrepresenting a fact or hiding something while dealing in securities amounts to fraud. An important point here to be taken care of is that while dealing in securities, such acts are considered as fraud. Overall, fraud can be anything. So let's say you have bought a property and you have done something very bad there. So that is a fraud, but that is not a fraud as per this regulation, because that act that is done as fraud has nothing to do with securities. I hope I have made myself very clear because this is an important thing. So moving on to the next point, by a person or his agent, which is very self-explanatory, in order to induce another person to deal in securities, which simply means that any of the mentioned actions above, when performed, propels another person to deal in securities, whether or not there has been any wrongful gain made or avoidance of loss done by a person or his agent. So irrespective of the fact that whether a wrongful gain has been made or a probable loss has been avoided in that deal by you or your agent, if that action is performed by you, that simply amounts to fraud. So let's understand it in a better way with the help of an example. So moving on to the next slide. So what basically expression is. So suppose we have two person, that is person A and person B. Here person A is expressing to person B that you should buy shares of Infosys as results are coming soon and I have a news that results should be good. So in this specific case there can be two scenarios. First is that person A is having details of the results of the Infosys which are yet to be made public. So he is having access to UPSI which he is communicating to person B, which itself is wrong with respect to prohibitions related to insider trading. In the case 2, he does not know about any of the fact. He is just expressing this statement in a reckless and careless manner just to induce person B to buy securities, which also amounts to fraud with respect to prohibition of fraudulent and unfair trade practices. Here buying of Infosys share will not impact person A because anyways he is not having the shares. But as he is expressing the details in a reckless or a careless manner and inducing the other person to buy those securities, it amounts to fraud. So let's move on to the next slide and understand the word omission. So here we have the broker and his client. Broker says to client that I have sold your shares of Infosys as the price was good and you shall buy them when the prices come down. So basically here anyone would understand that the broker has sold all his shares of Infosys because price was good and he is urging him to buy shares when the prices come down. But here he has told the correct statement but he has omitted out certain details that what portions of the share that he have sold out. The correct statement is that I have sold your 100 out of 1000 shares of Infosys as price was good and you shall buy them when the prices come down. So here the client would understand that all the shares have been sold and in the next purchase when he has to make, he'll have to buy all the 1000 share. But in fact, he just need to buy 900 share to complete his buffer of 1000 shares. So as per this case, broker is omitting certain details that he should have explicitly told to his client. Moving on to the next slide and understanding the meaning of concealment. So same case, a broker and a client. Broker says to client that you should buy 10,000 shares of Infosys as its price will increase. But as per this case, he is concealing an important fact that he himself has bought 1000 shares of Infosys pre-hand. So when the shares will be bought by his client in a huge number, the prices will increase and he'll make profit. So this is how via concealment frauds can be made. Now let's move on to the next slide and understand what all do not come under the ambit of fraud. So aspects like economic policy of government or economic situation of a country, general trends related to securities market, that the market is in uptrend or market is in downtrend, or any other matter of similar nature. All these points are very generic statement and hence they cannot be classified into the specific category of fraud. So I hope that was a comprehensive explanation to this question. So moving back to our question. So now when we browse through the list of options, we can clearly find out that option D says prediction of prices trend in the securities market is a generic statement and does not fall under the ambit of fraud. So option D here is the correct option. So it's time to move to our next question. So with respect to question number 2, as per section 4, an intermediary buying or selling securities in advance of a substantial client order is called dash. Options are advance trading, pre-trading, forward running, swift trading and front running. So basically this question pertains to a very important concept related to advance placing of orders with respect to a substantial client order. And if you know the answer, then only you can mark the right answer. Guessing the option won't help you out, in this case at least. So moving on to the next slide and learn something more about this part in the explanation section. So meaning of front running is clearly dealt in section 4 of Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices Act 2003. So when we see the official definition of front running, it goes like any intermediary buying or selling securities in advance of a substantial client order. That is, when a client places a substantial order, before executing that substantial order of that client, you execute your own order, or whereby a futures or option position is taken about an impending transaction. Impending transaction means that is a transaction that is about to happen in the same or related futures or options contract. I do understand that this can be a little difficult to grasp through this theoretical part definition. So let's understand it better with the help of an example. So moving on to the next slide. So let's say we have two people engaged in a transaction. The person in the brown coat is the client and the person in the blue coat is the broker. So let's say they are dealing in a security whose current market price is rupees 100. The client places an order to buy 1 lakh shares between the price range of 100 to 105. This range is given because as and when shares are bought in a large quantity, the price tends to increase. Therefore, ideally, the client's order has been placed top in the execution queue. but as and when this information is communicated by the client to the broker realizes that when such large amount of shares are being bought, then the share prices will definitely increase. So what broker here does is that before placing the client's order, he places his own order. Let's say he bought 1000 shares of rupees 100 of that same security. After that, he placed the client order. So as and when the client order gets executed, the share prices of that security increases. Let's say due to the sudden surge in buying of that security, the prices of that security rises up to rupees 115. Realizing this fact, broker immediately sells off the previously bought securities, thus making a profit of rupees 15 per securities, and thus he made a total profit of rupees 15,000 through this process of front running. So I hope that by now the concept of front running will be crystal clear to you. So moving back to the question 2. As per section 4, an intermediary buying or selling securities in advance of a substantial client order is called front running, and option E here says front running, which is our correct option. So now moving on to the next question, that is question number 3. What are the outcomes if a cartel performs circular transaction in respect of a security? Option A says false appearance of trading. Option B says inorganic increase in volume of trade. Option C says inflate, deflate or fluctuation in prices of securities. Option D says no change in beneficial ownership. Option D says all of the above. So this question is coming up from the circular transaction part. So let's learn something more about this part in the explanation section. So meaning of circular transaction is clearly dealt in section 4 of Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices 2003. So when we talk about circular transaction, it is always entered in respect of a securities and between certain intermediaries. And why it is done? It is done in order to provide a false appearance of trading. False appearance of trading means that though a lot of trade might be happening in that security, but there is no change in actual beneficial ownership of that security. It is just done to inflate, depress or cause fluctuation in the prices of security, and there is no intention of changing the beneficial ownership of that security. So let's try to understand it even better with the help of an example. So moving on to the next slide. So let's say we have two brokers, broker 1 and broker 2. In the first half of the cycle, let's say broker 1 sells 1 lakh shares of Infosys to broker 2. So here broker 1 is the seller and broker 2 buys those 1 lakh shares. In the second half of the cycle, the same 1 lakh shares that were previously bought by broker 2 from broker 1 are sold back again to broker 1. So you might have clearly seen that a cyclic pattern is made and there is no change in beneficial ownership. Previously also, broker 1 was having 1 lakh shares and now also he is having 1 lakh share. But as and when this cycle is repeated multiple number of times, there is a sudden surge in the volumes of this share being traded. And seeing this sudden surge, other people also get interested in this particular security. And that's how the prices of this particular security gets fluctuated. So this was the whole process of circular transactions. Here another word cartel is mentioned, which simply means a group of people. In this example, we have taken two people, that is broker 1 and broker 2. If we have even more number of brokers, that is broker number 3, 4, 5, 6, the same cyclic pattern of transaction will happen and that would be considered as a little bigger cartel. So that was pretty much it about the explanation part. Moving back to question number 3. So when we see the options again, we see that all of them are the outcomes of the circular transaction which are performed with respect to a security. So here option E is the correct option that states all of the above. So now it's time to march to the next question. So with respect to question number 4, as per section 5 of Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices Regulations 2003, what is the minimum rank of the investigating officer, that is IO, appointed by the board if it is of the view that a person or intermediary has violated the provisions mentioned in the Act? Option A says Superintendent, option B says Commissioner, option C says Additional General, option D says Division Chief, option E says Deputy General. Seeing the question itself, one can gauge the fact that it is a fact-based question, and if you know the fact right, you can easily come up with the right answer. So let's learn something more about this question in the explanation part. So this question is coming up from the section 5 Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices 2003, and this portion of the Act clearly deals with the part of power of board to order investigation. So let's move on to the next slide to learn something more about this power of board to order investigation. So if the board is of the view that an intermediary or any other person has violated the provisions mentioned in the Act or the regulation, then the board has certain power, and that power is that board can pass an order to investigate that person or intermediary associated with securities market, and the investigating officer which the board will be appointing should not be below the rank of division chief, and is called as investigating authority with respect to that case. So nothing much to understand here. These are certain facts that we need to remember. So moving back to the question, if we go through the option list now, we can see that division chief is mentioned in option D, which is our correct option with respect to this question. So it's time that we should move to our next question. So as per question number 5, in the interest of investors, board can take a decision to suspend or cancel the registration of an intermediary who is involved in fraud under what conditions? So as per option A, only when the interim report is submitted. Option B says only when the final report is submitted. Option C says irrespective of the fact that any such report is being submitted. Option D says both A and B, that is interim as well as final report, should be submitted. Option E says none of the above. So as you can see that this question also is a fact-based question. So let's learn something more about this question in the explanation section. So when we talk about section 11 and section 12 of Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices 2003, these sections clearly deal with the decisions that can be taken by board based upon the report submitted. So there are a list of decisions that can be taken by the board based upon the reports that are submitted. So in order to learn what all decisions can be taken by the board with respect to what reports are being submitted, let's move on to the next slide. So as per section 11, which clearly deals with the list of actions that can be taken only when the interim report is submitted. So section 11 deals with the interim report submissions. So the actions that can be taken here are suspension of trading in securities, restrain a person from accessing securities market, suspend any office bearer of any stock exchange, impound and retain the proceeds of security, direct to or not to dispose of assets forming a part of fraudulent transactions. So all these actions are the ones that can be taken only when the interim reports are submitted. And when we talk about the section 12, which clearly lists the actions that can be taken when the final reports are submitted, so the list of actions are issue of warning or censure. Censure here means criticizing the intermediary. The other actions that can be taken by board are suspension of the registration of intermediary or even cancellation of the registration of the intermediary. All these three actions can be taken only after the final report has been submitted to the board. I do understand that I might have rushed through all these points and not explaining to you each and every word of these points, but that will make video very long. For that you are welcome to check out our courses, but even at this point of time you are well equipped to answer this question. Moving back to our question, in the interest of investors, board can take a decision to suspend or cancel the registration of intermediary, and now we know that it can be only done when the final report is submitted. So here option B is the correct option. So moving on to the next slide, here I have collated all the answers to the previous question. You can cross check them if you want to. So moving on to the next slide, this is an extra question for you guys, answer to which I'll not be discussing in this video. I really encourage you to pause this video here, go through the question and type in your correct option in the comment section below. Well, that's pretty much it guys for this video. If you want to know more about EduTap, please log on to www.edutap.co.in. If you have any queries, please drop them at hello@edutap.co.in. We'll be more than happy to address them. You can even contact us on this mentioned mobile number for further assistance. If you found the content of this video to be informative and helpful, please don't forget to hit that like button. And for getting continuous update about the new videos being uploaded, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Happy learning. Bye-bye.